Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Tyson Sharpe. Tyson is an author, mindset and emotional coach, and podcast host. In the last couple of years, Tyson has coached hundreds of online business owners one on one, helping them resolve the internal conflicts holding them back. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Uh, the long version. uh, basically, like many people who went to university or college, I left and had no clue what I wanted to do. And so I studied everything. I studied 6 years in psychology, it's everything in organizational psychology and interpersonal psychology, and then had no clue what I wanted to do. I was basically a lost little puppy. And of all things, I decided to jet off and live in Canada. I lived in Canada for 2 years, where I was basically wanting to have fun, but at some level, I was also running from my problems. And so, while I was over there, I realized that although I was having fun snowboarding, doing a bunch of different things, I was basically unfulfilled, and I had basically a void inside me that said, you basically are not adding any meaning, purpose, any value in your life. You don't have any particular direction that you can be proud of. And that's when I decided to get into a lot of personal development. And like many people who reach that limit, they're just like, okay, well, I've got to do something. And so I picked up some books, started reading, got into personal development programs, started learning all that. And a real tipping point for me was when I was over in Canada, I invested half of everything I had in the bank and decided to jump into my first online coaching program. And so it was a huge shift for me. It was a big leap, and it's something that, brought a lot of fear, doubt, uncertainty, but I decided to sort of follow my heart and felt what was aligned with me rather than what my mind was scared of. And so that's really when I started leaping and studying the art of coaching. And I loved it so much, I moved back to Melbourne, where I'm from, where I'm living now, and decided to start my own online coaching business. And so that's really where the business started. And I just started going on a different journey of personal development. As a lot of entrepreneurs know, it's the best personal development journey you can be on. And things really shifted for me, where after a few years, I was still struggling. I wasn't really, quote unquote, making it, if you can call it that. But a big shift happened for me when I started actually doing a lot of the inner work myself. And I actually started meditating 2 hours a day, and with the initial intention of resolving a lot of my internal conflicts and a lot of my internal patterns, and facing a lot of my darkness and facing a lot of those uncomfortable emotions that come up. And since I started doing that type of work, everything's sort of fallen into place. Now, when I operated my business, I realized before that, I was basically doing it from a place of fear, a place of scarcity, a place of lack, a place of neediness. And I've realized, coaching hundreds of entrepreneurs in the last couple of years, that the vast majority are trying to build an online business because of fear. And they're building it because they want more freedom and they want more income, because they're scared of losing it, because they're scared of not having those things. And I find these days, it's really, that doesn't set the platform of a sustainable business. And so, as many people know, that we're increasing our level of consciousness in the planet, where we're starting to become more and more aware of our ego and our egoic ways. And with that increase in consciousness, it's my passion to just bring that into business, and so that help people bring more conscious businesses, where they can start building businesses from love, from places of alignment and flow, rather than fear, doubt, and worry, where most people are.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, like I talk about it a lot. At the end of the day, it's you versus you. So you're kind of you're the biggest roadblock to your success and kind of reaching that next level. So what are excuse me. So what are some of the things that you find people struggling with in terms of business owners, or what they're afraid of, and how they can kind of combat that and get past it?
Yeah, sure. So basically, in my community, my online community, and a lot of my clients, the number one thing is fear. So in terms of when we've been growing up, when we are, oh, one second. So when we basically have grown up as children, especially here in the Western world, we've adopted the belief that I need to be successful in order to feel enough, in order to feel worthy, in order to feel loved, right? We've developed these patterns that say, basically it's a survival mechanism that says, if I'm not loved, I won't survive, right? So as children, as we grow up as toddlers, we develop a bunch of different strategies, and we found out that if we achieve and if we do things that are successful, we get that love and that attention that to our unconscious mind is our survival. And that just basically evolves into when we're teenagers in school, or when we're adults finding our own journey in our own career, we unconsciously feel like I need to succeed and do well in order to fill this void within myself that says I need to be enough. I need to feel worthy if I'm to survive, right? If I'm to make it in this world and have that approval from those who mean the most to me. And so it didn't take long for me to work with so many entrepreneurs, including myself, where I realized that this is the basis. This is the very platform where all fears, doubts, worries, frustrations come from. It's always triggering this one form of pattern within us that says, I need to succeed in order to feel enough internally. And that's why I say in my groups that where a lot of people are getting stuck is they're trying to succeed externally in order to fill that internal void within themselves. So I find that's the primary pattern that a lot of people can start waking up to. And once you start shifting that, once you start operating from, once you start seeing it for what it is, that's when you start really shifting things on its head, and you can actually start building a more conscious business from a place that's more of your higher self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, habits and lifelong patterns and negative behaviors are oftentimes hard to break. What are some of the things someone can do to kind of get on track to, change that kind of mindset?
Yeah, good question. So it starts with awareness. So it's a sort of a bit of, it's not really common for a coach to ask this, but if I was to ask you and your listeners right now, what would you feel if you were to face your worst case scenario? So what is your worst case scenario, right? For many people, that's failure. For many people, that's embarrassment in front of a big audience. For many people, that's going broke. And my question is always, what is that emotion that you would feel? What would you feel internally if you were to face that worst case scenario? If your bank account was to diminish, right, to zero, or if you were to lose that family member, or whatever it may be, or whatever it is for business, if you were to fail on that big scheme in front of everyone, right? And many people say, oh, I have this fear of this feeling of fear, this feeling of disappointment, this feeling of regret, right? Sometimes they feel it in their chest, sometimes they feel a tightness in their stomach, right? And if that's the case, if you have these types of emotions, if you have this emotional trigger around fear, around fear of failure, around fear of loss, whatever it may be, unconsciously there's something holding you back. Unconsciously there's a pattern that is stopping your flow and your access of creativity, right? And your higher awareness, and just being able to build a business from that place of flow and creativity and abundance. And so in order to answer your question, one thing that people can do to combat that pattern is to actually feel it. A lot of people are trying to succeed because they don't want to feel that emotion. And so they avoid it, or they resist it, right? They avoid it in terms of when that fear comes up, they go ahead and they, instead of feeling it, they go and avoid it. They go and do something else. They distract themselves, right? Or they go and they try, the worst thing you can do is try to succeed from that place, right? Because that's also just avoiding this emotion. Or, so that's avoidance, or they resist it by thinking, by making it wrong, right? By thinking they shouldn't be feeling this way. They should be feeling something different, or they need to be fixed. So that's a form of resistance. So you're resisting what the emotion that's coming up, right? And in both scenarios, both avoiding and resisting, you're allowing that emotion to grow unconsciously. And so that's why you'll find that fear will always come up time and time and time again, and it will grow despite how much you succeed. That's why it doesn't matter how much you succeed, you'll always have the fear of failure. And even when you succeed and get that thing that you really do want, that your ego wants, you'll now live in fear that you're going to lose it. And that's where I find is a huge shift in entrepreneurs and people who are going out there to strive for big things, is to be aware of that pattern and to do what they can to overcome that. But I can talk more about that if you want, but happy to answer any questions that come up around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think self-awareness is key in that sense, in general, and figuring out what you're afraid of, what your hurdles and roadblocks are. It can get you a lot further. And I think with like some of the things, like you said, what you're afraid of, so loss. I lost my grandfather a year ago yesterday. So I mean, it still hurts. Not like that. It's close to the year mark. I thought about it a lot. I went through the grieving process, but eventually you'll lose in that sense someone close to you. So I think in order to succeed, and I think it's a progression of life. I mean, people experience that at different times. Obviously, it's a traumatic, and it's harder when you're going through it. Some children lose a parent or lose a grandparent, and they're not emotionally equipped to yet handle. I mean, adults aren't either because it's traumatic. But I think taking anything negative or traumatic or a setback or a failure will set you up for success in the future if you come to terms with it and learn something from it.
Mm, totally, totally. And there's so many things you can learn from actually feeling these patterns, like actually feeling these emotions. And one analogy I use is it's kind of like when you have these patterns emerge, it's like in terms of the fear, the doubts, the frustrations, the worries, it's basically just it's like a internal 5-year-old, right? So it's like an internal 5-year-old that is coming up, that has the belief, that has the pattern that says this needs to happen in my external environment, or this is who I need to be in order to be enough, right? In order to be okay, in order to be safe. And so that's all it is. When fear comes up, it's like it's like your internal 5-year-old pattern coming up. And so the analogy I use is, just imagine you're in a park and another person's 5-year-old comes up to you, right? Let's say they've lost their parents, and this 5-year-old comes up to you, and you can see there's love in their eyes, but they're also very scared, right? Because they don't know where their parents are. Now, would you tell that 5-year-old, go away until you feel better, right? Or would you say to them, it's wrong you're feeling this way, or you need to be fixed? You should be feeling something different. Right? Of course you wouldn't, right? You would just be the loving, safe space for this 5-year-old who's scared, who's come to you for some reassurance and some safety. And of course, we wouldn't, tell them that they're wrong, or avoid them until they feel better. But that's what we do to our internal 5-year-olds when they come up in the form of fear, doubt, worry, loss, frustration, whatever it may be, overwhelm. When our 5-year-olds come up, when our patterns come up, we tell ourselves, these 5-year-olds, that they're wrong. They need to be fixed, right? You shouldn't be feeling this way, or you avoid them. But something, to answer your question, something really shifts in you when you actually start to notice these 5-year-olds and actually start to feel them. Rather than avoiding them, rather than resisting them, you actually be the loving, safe space, and you hold the loving, safe space for them to be there, right? And you drop all resistance to it. So if the people who are listening right now have started to notice that there are some patterns of fear, of doubt, of worry, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, whatever it may be in your body, normally we're very aware of what that emotion is and what it physically feels like in your body. One thing that you might want to do is actually start to feel it. Actually start to feel it and and hold like a safe space for it. Hold a safe space for it to be there. And what you might notice is that when you actually are in a safe space, when you actually hold a safe space for this emotion to be there, what you're simply doing is you're just seeing that 5-year-old. You're actually seeing that 5-year-old and allowing them to be seen, allowing them to be heard, allowing them to be understood, and allowing them to be loved. And the reason why this is so important is because no fear can exist in a space where it's actually seen, where it's actually seen and actually understood. But all fear will continue and will grow unconsciously in a space where you don't want it to be there. The more you don't want it to be there, the more it will grow, right? But if you can actually feel it right now, actually breathe with it and not need it to leave, but feel it because you have a safe enough space for it and just allow it to be there, you'll actually develop a very, very different relationship with that fear, very, very different relationship with that emotion and with that pattern. And you can feel it. So one way I do this with my clients is to actually describe it in detail where they feel it. Do they feel it in their head, their chest, their stomach, their legs? Does it feel a bit all over? And you might want to exaggerate the feeling a little bit, right? Exaggerate the emotion so this can come to you and you can be more aware of it. But once you describe the location, what is it in detail? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel empty? Right? Does it feel jagged? Does it feel like it's pulsating or moving, or shifting in some way? And really start to pay attention to it. And pay attention to it, knowing that in here is a really, really deep lesson. It's a really deep lesson, and it can completely shift the relationship you have with yourself because you've now dropped all resistance. You've now dropped all judgment. You're actually feeling this emotion that you consciously couldn't or didn't want to feel for years, sometimes decades. Right now, you're actually just starting to feel it. Does that make sense?
No, it
I'm
does.
happy.
It's
I'm happy to walk people through what to do next, but I'm happy to also answer any questions that come up for you right now as well.
no, I mean it does. It's, coming to terms with it, finding like exposing it kind of and being vulnerable to it.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And that's the transition. It's being vulnerable to it. It's opening up a safe enough space for it. What you're just doing is opening up a safe enough space for that 5-year-old to be seen. And the reason why this is important is because this 5-year-old, this pattern is actually coming up so it can transcend. It's actually coming up so it can move on, right? One way of saying it is it's coming up so it can come out, right? It's actually coming up to you because you've, at some conscious or unconscious level, you've already opened up a safe enough space for this 5-year-old to be seen. I can guarantee you there's other 5-year-old patterns, there's other fears and deep fears, doubts, and frustrations that you're not aware of right now. But this one you are. This one right now you are aware of it. So you've actually opened up a safe enough space for this 5-year-old to come to you and be seen exactly the same way as this 5-year-old would walk up to you in a park. And right now you're just feeling it. You're just breathing with it and you're actually feeling it, and you've dropped resistance to it and you've dropped the judgments around it. And it's important to realize that because you've actually accessed a place of love for it to be there, and because you've described it in detail and you can actually become aware of it, that also reminds you that you're not the emotion, right? If you're able to describe it to me, if you're able to feel it, that means that you're not the emotion. You're the one observing it, right? You're the one observing this emotion. And that is a really key piece in this transition, because you can actually feel it fully, but also notice that you're not that emotion. You're the one observing it. So you can observe the pattern, you can observe the 5-year-old, you can actually observe the love as well. And you can just be the loving, safe space that all of that exists in, right? And you can just hold that space. And it's not your job to move it on. It's not your job for you to do anything with this emotion. It's just your job to feel it. It's just your job to be there and to hold that safe space. And what you'll find is that what a lot of people are starting to feel right now is probably, you may still feel the emotion, but you'll feel it's less harsh because you can still feel it, but you would have dropped resistance to it. And when you drop resistance to it, you actually can just feel it for what it is without the compound effect of thinking you shouldn't be feeling this way, right? And so just breathing with it, just feeling it, just continuing to love this 5-year-old would actually allow this pattern to transcend in its own time. A lot of people want to feel this. A lot of people they want to feel this emotion because they realize they want to be there for that safe space for that 5-year-old. But the more they want to feel it, the more they feel it's leaving. A lot of my clients describe it as, I want to hold this safe space, but it's starting to leave. And I'm like, where are you going? Right? I want to feel you. I want to be the safe space for you. And so it's an absolute game changer when you're able to feel it fully and allow it to transcend in its own time, right? Allow it to transcend, allow yourself to feel it, and allow yourself to just be that loving, safe space. And the reason why it transcends, and the reason why you just you're able to let go of this emotion by feeling it, is because when you do that, you actually become the parent this 5-year-old wishes they had. You are actually now providing the loving, unconditional, safe space for this 5-year-old, and you're becoming the parent that 5-year-old wishes they had. And that's why when you actually see this for what it is, you actually notice this 5-year-old and feel it fully. That's when it feels safe to transcend, right? It feels safe to move on in its own time. How long that takes, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it takes 90 seconds. Sometimes it takes a day. Sometimes it takes a few days, right? The time frame doesn't matter. What you need to do is just feel it fully without resistance, without judgment. And I guarantee you that pattern will transcend and move on in its own time.
Yeah, that's a great way of breaking it down. So, what motivates you to succeed?
Well, it depends what you define success, right? Depends what you define as to succeed. I really just see it as an internal journey to connect with myself. That's what I find success is. And I see the external success in my business as a byproduct of that, right? As a byproduct of that. So, for example, I've been meditating 2 hours a day for the last 150 days to the date of this recording. And as I just sit there in silence for 2 hours a day, sometimes even more, sometimes 3 or 4, I I do that with the intention of doing what we just did, right? It's feeling all of those patterns of worry, doubt, loss. And, when I started doing this, I had so much sadness come up around past relationships and so much worry about uncertainties of business and stress around money. All those different things would just come up. And it was my intention to just feel that fully and transcend all of those patterns. And the external success was really just a byproduct of that. Because once you start transcending these patterns, what you might notice is you actually have a safe space now of creativity, right? Of flow, of alignment. And if you just start to listen to your heart from that place, your heart will start giving you nudges as to what feels in flow, what feels light, what feels heavy, what feels aligned. And I just started building my business from that place, right? I started building my business from so much infinite creativity and realizing that I have infinite possibility. And I started dropping the stories that were in my way. And I started building my business from that place of possibility, of just what was flowing out of me. What was flowing out of me, I was just like the space, the channel that was, just allowing this to flow out of me. And I started doing it into my Facebook group. I just had this passion and this energy and creativity to just start my Facebook group again and add value in there and build a community and start and helping them shift these things, these patterns that are coming up, which is why I do the free transformational group coaching calls once a week. Like that just came out of flow. I'm like, let's just do it. All my business coaches have told me not to, but it feels aligned, so let's do it. And so that's what I find success is to me. Success to me is developing that deeper relationship with yourself, transcending these patterns so you actually find out who you really are. And then the external success in terms of the clients, in terms of the income, in terms of the, in terms of what people would externally say is successful in terms of a business, that's just a byproduct of the internal work that I'm doing. So that's really what I'm seeing at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think switching over that mindset and not, I mean, in my 20s, I think I was chasing more title and, money. And then when I switched over my mindset to be more aware of, what my passions were and that I wanted to add value and leave a legacy, that
Yeah.
success and money and everything was a byproduct of that kind of shift.
Yeah. That's awesome. What's the legacy?
Well, I mean, like we talked about, like the whole giving back in terms of fostering, volunteering, doing stuff like that, doing a lot of pro bono stuff in terms of digital marketing with nonprofits, and just even though I'm working in spaces that pay the bills, there's still things that interest me in giving back and helping communities around me kind of grow, and different nonprofits also succeed and get their message across online.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, me too. I in the Facebook group, we basically, that's what came out of me after a meditation. I'm like, man, let's just do something together with the online community that it's just full of online business owners. And so I'm like, what if we had a non-for-profit or owners of a charity come on a Zoom call and we all contribute, 15, 20 minutes of our time, and how about this charity with all of our expertise, whether it be business strategy, social media, design, messaging, right? All these things we're experts at. And that's what we did. We did that last month. Is we had a charity come on, um, a charity from Cambodia who run a non-for-profit over there in terms of like this arts center that help the community and help people through the arts and things like that. And a bunch of a bunch of the members in the community were able to jump on, and now I'm getting really creative and really excited about how we can, add more value through helping charity, through helping non-for-profits and organizations that are in need. And yeah, it's exciting when you focus on your calling, when you focus on your legacy, like you say, and that's when things flow out of you, and then your success is just a byproduct, right? Everyone just wants to jump on board because you're in flow, and you open up a level of safety that says that people will want to work with you because you actually don't need their money, you actually don't need them to get on board for you to feel like you're enough, right? You're just in flow, and you open up that level of safety for people. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. So, what's one thing you may have seen in yourself as a weakness in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
Weakness, yeah, definitely. I saw a weakness. I used to see weakness as feeling emotion, right? So many people, especially in the Western culture and being male, we're taught to not feel your emotions, right? We're taught to be tough, right? To succeed, you got to be strong. You need to overcome all these things. You need to push. You need to hustle. Um, what I started finding out was that I was trying to overcome a problem that my ego had created, right? So my ego creates this problem that says you need to succeed in order to be enough, or my ego creates this problem that says you need to succeed and make money and all these different things. And now I'm just trying to strive and overcome this challenge that I completely created in my mind, right, in my ego. And so I saw that as a weakness. I saw it as a weakness when I was to feel, when I was to, um, be in a space of fear or stress or worry. And I've completely turned that into a strength just by what you guys, by what you've just listened to. Um, but it makes me excited. It makes me excited that people who are listening are actually starting to feel their emotions. Um, and it's a strength. It's such a strength. Like for me, this is the biggest thing anyone can ever do, to develop the connection with yourself, develop the relationship with yourself. If you place the connection with yourself as the highest priority, everything else will fall into place, right? The the priority I put on in the group and on the podcast and things like that, I always place priority on connection. So connection with yourself, consciousness. So it's elevating your level of consciousness to know that who you are and what you are is so much bigger than anything you can, any challenge that you have and any result you can accomplish. And then courage. It's courage to leap and follow your heart and take those leaps that feel scary to your mind, but feel very aligned in your body. And so that's really what I see as a strength now is my ability to feel, my ability to connect with myself. I'm just finding everything else is falling into place, and people who have just done this exercise will find that as well. What you may also find, it's with a side of caution, is that when you actually open up a safe enough space to feel these patterns, more will emerge. More will emerge because you've actually just opened up a safe enough space, consciously or unconsciously, for more 5-year-olds to come up. So you'll find that once you feel a pattern of fear or worry or doubt, more will come up. But it's good to know that they were in you anyway, right? But you've just learned how to feel it without resistance, without judgment. If you can do it with one pattern, you can do it with more. And trust me, it gets more and more easy. It becomes more and more in flow, and and therefore you just develop a bigger and bigger connection with yourself, with more flow, more creativity, more abundance, and definitely more external success as a byproduct. So I'll warn that as a side of caution that more will come up, but it's all in design. Trust me.
Yeah, I agree. So, what's one piece of advice you may have for the audience?
One piece of advice. Well, it's definitely a matter of increasing your awareness, right? All this is done is just increased a level of awareness, right, at some level. And so being aware of what's actually happening internally um, is it's just like a sphere. It's just like a ball that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You start right now, you'd be starting to become aware of what your fears actually are, what they actually mean. And you're actually maybe identifying some stories of where you were stuck, right? Some stories of what you thought should or shouldn't happen in order for you to feel okay, in order for you to feel safe, in order for you to feel enough. And that will just start expanding more and more. And so you can start becoming aware of more stories, becoming aware of more patterns, and so being conscious of that, right? That's why I highly encourage you. Well, the consciousness of the planet's doing this anyway. You can feel that more and more people are becoming more and more aware of their ego, right? And egoic stories that we're telling ourselves. That's why we're all chasing success, but now we're actually starting to realize that's actually not what's making us fulfilled, right? In fact, it can actually do the opposite, right? The more success we chase, if we're doing it from an egoic place, actually leads to more depression, actually leads to a lower quality of life. So we're increasing our consciousness, right? It's happening anyway. And, but you can be at the forefront of this shift by building a conscious business, by first of all, developing a connection with yourself that increases your own consciousness, and then channeling that consciousness, that heightened level of consciousness, into your business. So you're now building a business that's conscious, where you're not building it from ego, but you're building it from a place of who you really are, which is infinite creativity, infinite abundance, infinite love, and you're actually starting to do it from flow. You're actually doing it from alignment, things that feel aligned with your heart and your calling, or what you would call your legacy. And doing that in this space would be the flip on its head, which would be my advice.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yeah, so if you're interested in this, if you're interested in doing this type of stuff and feeling and understanding what happens with these patterns and how to transcend more of them, then I have my podcast, which is called Awaken Your Business, the Awaken Your Business podcast. Uh, I just basically deliver everything in there. It's all the exercises, all the ways in which you can start to become more and more aware of these patterns. And and yeah, if you love that sort of stuff, then I do free transformational group coaching calls for the people in my online community, which the Facebook group is called Connect, Contribute, Collaborate. So connect, contribute, collaborate. It's a bit of a it's not the most effective name, but it's an awesome community. Over 1,000 members now of online business owners who are all doing this work, but we're also in the space of co-creating, collaborating with each other, and doing what we can to basically make a difference and contribute to the world. Like I've got the an event coming up, which is a free event, but I also give the members an opportunity to contribute to basically a charity in Vietnam, where we're actually contributing bowls of rice to children who have been saved from slavery and trafficking. And so up until right now, we've got over we've contributed over 4,000. I think it's 4,500 bowls of rice for these children. And so yeah, we're doing awesome things in the community. But if you love feeling this sort of stuff and you love recognizing these patterns for what they are, and you really want to create a shift, then the podcast is a great start. So it's the Awaken Your Business podcast, and I just go through the exercises in there.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.